Hey there, it's Mitzi. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing my February reading wrap-up. Now, if you follow my channel, you know that during February I participated in a library readathon and a Laura Ingalls Wilder readathon. A lot of the books that I read at the beginning of the month were for those readathon prompts and challenges. So some of those that I mentioned, I might have mentioned earlier, but I didn't go into too much detail about them, and so I'm going to talk briefly about those first. So the first ones that I read were Pioneer Girl and Laura's album, A Remembrance Scrapbook of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And these two books were for the library challenge as well as the Laura Ingalls Wilder challenge. And I can't remember the name of those readathons. I'll try to remember to put the titles of those here. So anyway, I checked those two books out from the library, and they were both picture books. And that way I could be participating in both readathons, basically. So the Pioneer Girl was pretty much just a biography about Laura Ingalls Wilder, where you had pictures and then, you know, details about her life. And it was great. It was a 5-star read. And then the scrapbook book about Laura Ingalls Wilder was the same thing. It was a biography and told a lot of the same things, but it was more pictures of the trinkets and things that she had collected over her lifetime, because apparently she collected a lot of trinkets and things. And so that one too was a 5-star read, but there were very different kinds of formats for the biography. But I do, if you're interested in Laura Ingalls Wilder at all, I do say that both of those were great reads, and if you like picture books, I would say pick those up. So anyway, those were two that were in my library that I really enjoyed reading. And then I also picked up for the Library Love, I think that was what it was called, readathon, was one called Melisande or Melisande or something like that. I think I pronounced that picture book title like 3 different ways. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it was a great book anyway. This was by E. Nesbitt, and I really like E. Nesbitt's storytelling. Usually when I read an E. Nesbitt, I love it because the storytelling is just so fantastic. But in this one, it was a picture book and it was a fairy tale. And it was a funny one because it kind of pulled from other fairy tales. It kind of was a little nod to some other fairy tales. And there was a lot of exaggerations and things in this one. And so I really enjoyed that. Again, I love fairy tales, so that was one that I kind of figured I would enjoy anyway. So those were some that I had picked up for the Library Love Your Library readathon. Then I also picked up, one of the other challenges was to listen to an audiobook, check out an audiobook from your library, and also to check out a movie from your library. So I did those too. The first thing I did was check out an audio of Anne of Avonlea by Ellen Montgomery. This, of course, is in the Anne of Green Gables series. You're probably familiar with that series. And if you're not, please pick it up. But I am participating in the Analog, and what we're doing is we're reading one book a month for the Anne of Green Gables series. Of course, we started with Anne of Green Gables in January, and then in February we read Anne of Avonlea. And so I thought, well, I'll check it out in the audio version from my library, and so that's what I did for that. And I actually had a puzzle, and I worked the puzzle and did some chores while I listened, and it was just a lot of fun to do that. So I was glad to check that out from my library for free and enjoy listening to Anne of Avonlea. And of course, it was great to have the Analog because I could hear other people's thoughts as we read. Then I also checked out 2 movies, and I've talked about one of them, Remains of the Day. And it was great. I loved that movie. If you haven't seen that one, I do. Of course, I say read the book first because the book is one of my 5-star reads. I love that book. I want to read it again. But if you have read it and you enjoyed that book, I do suggest the movie because it is a great one. Now, it's an older movie, but I didn't feel like it was outdated too much. You know, a lot of times it looks kind of dated or whatever, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. It had Emma Thompson and Anthony Hopkins in it, and a great cast as well. You would recognize some of the other actors in this one too, and it was great. So if you haven't seen that, but one I haven't mentioned is Hamlet. I checked out Hamlet from the library too. I just happened upon it, and I thought, well, Rainey would be proud of me from Rainy Day Reads, because if you don't follow Rainey, you need to follow her channel. I'll leave a link to it below. But she does a lot of crafting and hobby kind of things, and that was her challenge for the Readathon. And so I went the performance part of that, and I checked out Hamlet because she talks a lot about Shakespeare on her channel. I think she does like a Shakespeare Readathon at some time during the year, but I've never participated because I've never been that much of a Shakespeare fan. So, you know, in high school we had to read a couple of plays, and that was enough for me. But my son had actually talked to me when he was, I think like 2 years ago, they had a whole unit on Shakespeare that they had done, one of the plays, and he had done some others. I think they ended up reading 3 plays while he was in high school. And he had said something about how much he loved Shakespeare and how much he enjoyed it. So I really think that sometimes it's just how Shakespeare's presented to you. You know what I mean? So anyway, I thought I would give it a chance, and I watched the David Tennant version of Hamlet, and that was why I picked it up, because I'm a huge David Tennant fan. If he's in it, I want to see it. So that's why I picked this one up. And I thought Rainey would be proud of me for checking out a Hamlet play. And so I did, and I'm happy to say that I loved this play. It was really well done to me. Now, it is low budget. I was thinking it was going to be like a regular movie, but it is the play. But what was different about this was it was a modern take on it. Now, they still spoke the language of Shakespeare. It's word for word the play, which made it super interesting. But they're in clothes from today. You know, he's wearing a tuxedo and she's wearing, looks like a prom dress. So that was kind of comical to me. But it didn't take away from the play. They were on a stage and they were acting it out in modern times. And I loved that about it because it felt more like a play. So if you are interested in Shakespeare at all, I do suggest checking out the David Tennant version of Hamlet. I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad that I had the Readathon, because I would have never picked that up if I wouldn't have had the Readathon. And also another one that I never would have picked up was the Animal Farm graphic novel. I loved it. I thought it was really, it was a 5-star read for me, and I was surprised because in the past I picked up graphic novels and I've really not enjoyed them that much. I've talked about it before on my channel that it's like overstimulating for me, but this one had a lot of white space, and the illustrations I really enjoyed. It was easy to follow, and I already knew this story too. So I do suggest reading Animal Farm first, and then maybe picking up this graphic novel. I want to read more graphic novels like this. This format was perfect for me. So I'm surprised that I did love it as much as I did, but it excites me because it means that there are some graphic novels out there that I would enjoy. And again, I wouldn't have picked those up if not for this Readathon, so I'm glad for that. And then I read The Scent of Water by Elizabeth Goudge. Now, this is my first Elizabeth Goudge. I've never read any, but I've always been told that I would love her writing, and they were right. I do love Elizabeth Goudge's writing. It's beautiful. Now, I did enjoy this. This was a good book, but it wasn't a 5-star read for me. I thought it was a beautifully told, but the plot wasn't that interesting to me, unfortunately. I do feel like her writing is so beautiful and she tells a great story. So I do think that it was just the plot for me, that I wasn't that invested in the, and maybe it was just, I took a long time to read this because I was reading it so slow because her words were so beautiful that I kind of would stop. And maybe I should have read it like I normally read just a regular novel. I don't know. Anyway, for me it was a good read. I enjoyed it. But I do think that there's another Elizabeth Goudge out there that I would like better. So let me know if you've read an Elizabeth Goudge and if you suggest a certain one I should read next. So that was The Scent of Water. And then I also read another, I'm buddy reading. If you follow my channel, you know that my son and I are buddy reading the Chronicles of Narnia. And this was book 3. Now, some people put these in a different order. I'm going by our collection that we have. This is book 3, The Horse and His Boy. This was a good read. If it was just a book I had picked up to read, I would have enjoyed it fine. But it wasn't like The Magician's Nephew and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Those were 5-star reads for me. This one is, I felt like a filler story. It wasn't about the children from the wardrobe, Peter and Edmund and Susan and Lucy. They're not in this story until the very end, and it's not about them at all. And so I wanted them. I expected the wardrobe children after reading about the wardrobe. And so I just wasn't as into this story. I wasn't invested in the characters like I was with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. However, I'm reading the next one, Prince Caspian, and they're back. So I'm happy because I'm enjoying that one a lot more. It was a good read, and I'm excited to read the next one, but I'm glad to see my children back in Prince Caspian. And so then I read Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. If you follow my channel, you know I'm trying to read one Agatha Christie a month, and this was a 5-star read. This kept me guessing all the way through. One thing about this book is I know it's super popular, but I don't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it, and I had intentionally been that way because I knew I always wanted to read it. So I've never watched a movie adaptation or a TV adaptation or anything pertaining to Death on the Nile. I only knew that it was some kind of adventure on the Nile. So for me, that was enough. And if you haven't heard anything, I hope you haven't. Don't let them spoil it for you. Just go read it because it's better that way. So I won't say too much about it, but I will say I thought I knew what was going on and I didn't. And so that made it even a lot more fun for me. And the ending was such a shock for me. That was fantastic. So there was a lot of things in this that was just super fun. This one is way up there on my favorites for Agatha Christie. So if you haven't read Death on the Nile, I loved it. And so I do want to see the movie, but I don't want to see it right now because I think sometimes if you see the movie too close to reading something, you know, you're a little more critical about it. So I do want to wait a while. And I haven't heard too many people that love the book, love the movie too, kind of thing. But if there is a movie adaptation or a TV adaptation or something that is really close to the book, let me know in the comments and I'll check that out. And the next book I read was Miss Bunkle's book by D.E. Stevenson. Now this was Miranda Mills' Comfort Book Club for the month of February. If you don't follow her channel, you need to because she has a wonderful channel. And I'll leave a link to that below. But I wanted to participate, so I picked up a copy of Miss Bunkle's book. This is a laugh out loud book. It was great. If you like small town or small village kind of stories where everybody knows everybody's business, that's what this story is. It's that kind of book. The main character is struggling and she needs some money, so she decides to write a book. Well, she has never written a book, and she decides, well, I'll just write what I know. Well, what she knows is everybody's business in the town, and so she writes it out as a book. And she puts her pen name, of course she doesn't use her real name, and the people in the town read the book, and of course they are super upset about it. And it's about all of their reactions to their so-called character in the book and the things that happen because she has written this book. So some surprising things happen after they read it. The different ways that they respond makes it just so much fun. And I loved all of the characters. Even the ones I didn't like were super interesting, and I did care to know what would happen to them. It was fun. I loved the way it ended, and I can't wait to read more D.E. Stevenson. So if you like that small town gossip kind of funny, you know, just lighthearted kind of book, I suggest picking up Miss Bunkle's book because it was great. And then finally, and that was a 5-star read for me. And then finally, my favorite read for the month of February was The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. Now, I read this with Alice from Alice in the Giant Bookshelf and Art from a Bookshelf Odyssey. And that made it even just that much better because they loved it too. We all loved this book. And I think this was a favorite read for both of them as well. Now, Art had already read this probably many times, but he enjoyed discussing the stories with us, and so each day we would read a story and then discuss it, and it made my February because I couldn't wait to get up in the morning, read a story, and then talk about it with them. And it was just wonderful. This book, Ray Bradbury is just a genius storyteller, and the more I read of Ray Bradbury, the more I fall in love with his work. This particular one, though, has so many topics covered. There are so many different topics, and he does it in surprising ways. Every story was thought-provoking and packed a punch. Every story. So when we were at the end, I actually asked Art and Alice, what was your favorite? And then we all were struggling to figure out what our favorite was. For me, The Highway is what I say was my favorite, and I think it was because it was a short one, but the way it was short, but again, it packed such a punch and was so thought-provoking. I was amazed at how he could say so much in such few words, So I think that's why I enjoyed that one so much. But I loved every story in this book. I will say, though, that if you do want to read it, check the original, because the original was published, I think, in 1951. And the stories included in that, all of them were not in this book. And there was actually another Ray Bradbury story in this edition that wasn't in the original. So I wanted to read the original stories. So we went through and we looked at the original stories and made sure that we read all of those. So be careful about your editions. I don't know why they do that, but they did change a few. So you want to make sure you get all of them because they're all great. And so you don't want to miss any of those. But Ray Bradbury is one that I will definitely be reading more of. If you do read Illustrated Man, it's a great one for a book club or buddy read too, because there's so many topics. He talks about virtual reality. He talks about racism. He talks about book banning. There's a lot of topics in here that he talks about that it's almost like, when you read it now, realizing that he wrote it in 1951, you think, wow, you really, hit the nail on the head with where you were going with what you thought was coming, because a lot of the things that we're dealing with now, due to technology and things, he talks about in this book. And so I don't know, it just blew my mind, and I think Alice and Art felt the same way. So this was my favorite read, but again, I didn't have one book that I didn't enjoy reading. So I'll take that as a wonderful month of reading for February. It was a great month. I'm glad that I was able to participate in a couple of readathons. And then this month, during March, I'm participating in 3 readathons. And so I had a lot of reading to do, but I'm enjoying the books that I'm reading right now. So what are you reading right now? Let me know in the comments. What was your favorite read for February? Let me know that too. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.